welcome to the Global Apparel Sourcing Expo. My name is Matthijs Grité. I'm Secretary General of the International Apparel Federation, the organizer of this expo and this conference. And we're extremely lucky to have some great speakers for you at the expo. And our first speaker, I'm very proud to announce, is the president of amfori, Christian Ewert. amfori, many of you know, among other things, the owner of the BSCI, global leader in social compliance in many sectors, of which the apparel industry is the largest one. The IF and BSCI are often in touch. BSCI amfori is very active in its connections with multilateral organizations, with European governments, with other global governments, obviously dealing with the supply chain as IF is. As I said, we're very lucky to have the president of amfori, and I would now like to give the word to Christian Ewert.
Thank you very much, Matthias, for the kind introduction, and also from my side, hello, ladies and gentlemen, to all the participants from around the world. It is indeed a pleasure to speak to you today for the event of the Global Apparel Sourcing Expo. I think my name has been mentioned often enough, but amfori itself is the largest association advocating for open and sustainable trade. Over the course of my presentation, I would like to share amfori's approach and our perspective on a sustainable future for the garment industry. And allow me, before we delve into, let's say, the industry situation in today's presentation, I would like to start by providing you just with a very brief introduction about amfori, our programs, tools, and systems. The next slide, please. amfori is the leading non-profit association of global commerce that enables organizations to enhance human prosperity, use natural resources responsibly, and drive open trade globally. We call this at amfori trade with purpose. amfori's impact on the trade sector dates to our origins some 40 plus years ago, the year 1977. Although we are a Brussels-based organization with a strong connection to the European Union, sustainable trade is something that we address globally. Our 2,400 plus members, representing a combined turnover of more than 1.5 trillion euros, greatly benefit from sharing information, thereby having better leverage vis-a-vis producers, and at the same time reduce audit fatigue by sharing information. Next slide, please. We offer our members a practical framework and tools that enable them to manage the social and environmental performance issues of their supply chains and to anticipate trends. We also advocate for progressive policy and collaborate with high-level stakeholders to achieve common aims. Next slide, please. More than 700 of our members operate in the textile and garment sector. Our membership is global with a strong representation in Europe and a growing base in the Americas, Asia, as well as Australia. Our members range from SMEs and family-run businesses to large household brands recognized around the planet. Although we differ in size, what we all have in common is our drive to advance a world of open and sustainable trade. Our approach and systems provide solutions for all members who commit to improving their social and environmental performance along their supply chains wherever they may be located. Next slide, please. All right. The garment industry and sustainability. The global garment and apparel industry has had a significant impact on economic, social, environmental developments for centuries. At the start of the first industrial revolution, textile production was the dominant industry in major economies. In the last 50 years, the industry has been one of the largest employers in developing countries and provided the first step towards industrialization in many Asian and African countries. Let's just look at China as one example. Growing concern on the environmental footprint, recent disasters such as Rana Plaza and the prevalence of poor working conditions have increased scrutiny on the future of sustainability in the industry. 90% of the workers in the industry are women, often in low-paid and vulnerable positions. The industry itself is responsible for approximately 10% of annual global carbon emissions. And let's compare this, more than all international flights and maritime shipping emissions combined. Now the COVID-19 crisis is a catalyst, certainly not the root cause, but the catalyst for intensifying the debate on the future of the textile industry and its sustainability. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic has generated major disruption along global supply chains and has resulted all over the world in strict health and safety measures, with a number of key sourcing countries imposing lockdown measures. With the global spread of COVID-19, businesses are facing bankruptcy at an unprecedented scale, resulting in job losses for millions. And this is expected to even further accelerate from Q4 of 2020. Over 90% of amfori members from all sectors who responded to an amfori survey have experienced high impact on their businesses during the pandemic. The textile and garment industry is among the hardest hit due to the lack of demand for fashion. I mean, closed stores and little opportunity to wear, let's say, the latest fashion trends during the time of the pandemic. Many companies have faced cancellation or reductions of orders due to the decreased consumer demand, blocked or delayed shipments due to either logistical system control issues or suspensions at the border. Severe financial challenges in terms of cash flow and liquidity, as well as solvency concerns. Economists have predicted that COVID-19 would wipe out $300 billion of revenue from the world's apparel market in 2020 alone. The impact on workers and their dependents has been devastating in terms of unemployment, lower wages, and health challenges. And once again, women are among the worst hit as they increasingly find themselves in the lowest paid roles, which are increasing, the first to be laid off and find themselves without basic social protections afforded to higher paid workers. Next slide, please. COVID-19 provides the catalyst and the opportunity to develop new measures for CSR in the garment industry. Let us remember Winston Churchill and what he said in terms of never waste a good crisis. The COVID-19 crisis can be a turning point for accelerating a just transition towards a more resilient, carbon neutral, and circular global apparel industry that benefits everyone. All stakeholders, and this includes governments, international organizations, the NGO groups, civil society, and businesses, have a crucial role to play and need to be engaged. Environmental and social perspectives and technological developments need to be at the center at the development of a new vision for sustainability in the industry. And here amfori believes that a framework to build progress on this is implementing an SDG lens on everything governments and businesses do. This includes a range of climate, social, and political considerations on all new policies implemented by governments. With this, any regular initiative would also need to consider the specific risks and differentiated impacts of business-related activities on vulnerable groups such as women, migrant workers, and children. The industry can still realize its potential to create new businesses and job opportunities and limit a further environmental degradation. Slide 8, please. During this difficult time, we believe that responsible business conduct is the only route that will ensure business relations can be strengthened during a time of crisis. Businesses will need to proceed as much as possible with payments as usual and do not renegotiate prices or payment terms. Make the effort to understand the local context, including the current situation and local measures taken. Communicate with local producers to understand if they are operational or not, and to discuss specific challenges they are facing. Engage with trade unions and local stakeholders to get their perspective in supporting affected workers. Make sure safety measures to contain the risk of infection are implemented at the work floor. And pay particular attention to women workers and other vulnerable groups affected by the crisis. During the COVID-19 crisis, we have developed these guidelines with the input of our members. In our eyes, should businesses follow this code, the health of sourcing countries' economies and their workers' livelihoods will be more stable, more resilient, and better prepared to weather any possible storms on the horizon. Next slide, please. Financially, well, or let's put, what will be important for governments and businesses? It is to financially support a collaborative, coordinated approach to create and strengthen these social protection floors in producing countries. Improve systems of social dialogue and engagement opportunities with trade unions. Strengthen grievance mechanisms in factories to allow workers to air grievances. Commit to reducing greenhouse gases in line with the Paris Agreement. Work together in favor of pragmatic legislation to ensure environmental and human rights due diligence. Engage with and sensitize consumers on sustainable consumption. Similarly, there are endless opportunities for the development of new technologies that allow for better supply chain mapping, more sustainable production of garments, and improvement of conditions for workers. Next slide, please. This is where amfori can and does take action. We believe we are well placed in this context with its large membership to support a new vision in sustainability in the garment industry by leveraging 1/3 of our members' businesses are in the garment sector, our strong relationships and partnerships with stakeholders, including governments, the European Union, the UN agencies, and the civil society. Our tools on improving both social and environmental performance of businesses. And last but not least, our commitment to advance gender equality in the workplace and across supply chains. Next slide, please. So we are addressing first social concerns. To enhance the economic resilience of sourcing countries, workers at the lowest tier of the supply chain and the communities they live in, amfori has published a statement reconfirming our commitment to advancing living wages in global supply chains and are taking steps towards that goal. In response to the economic ripple effect of COVID-19, amfori guides its members on responsible purchasing practices in order to sustain businesses amidst this challenging time and uphold sustainable working conditions. Developing guidelines for businesses on responsible purchasing practices to sustain businesses really as a core element. We joined forces with 14 other organizations to release a statement calling on all stakeholders to take responsible action in response to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis in the global garment industry. Furthermore, we endorsed the ILO, IOE, and ITUC call to protect workers in the garment industry and supporting the call's working group to advance the implementation of the statement's commitments. We are also engaging with other organizations to explore establishing an international emergency fund to support workers and the textile industry over the medium term. Next slide, please. We are also addressing environmental concerns in this context. Supporting the fashion industry to reduce its impact on the climate change through our members is a key pillar of amfori's flagship environmental system, amfori BPI, as well as amfori's climate change program. Our recent actions here include joining the UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action to help businesses to meet the Paris Agreement target of 30% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2030. I just recently signed an MOU with ZDHC to reinforce our partnership and establishing sustainable chemical management practices throughout global supply chains, and contributing to a policy position on the EU Green Recovery developed by a coalition of apparel and footwear organizations, the so-called Policy Hub. Next slide, please. But we are also looking into innovation and technology. As such, we are developing a new information platform for amfori's social and environmental compliance and performance initiatives. And one aspect in the medium term of the platform will be to develop, with the use of new technologies, that we can trace products to their source over several tiers in the supply chain. This should improve the ability to detect areas for social improvement, as well as environmental or even violations along supply chains in the garment industry. Next slide, please. A number of further amfori initiatives cut across social and environmental sustainability and into various sectors of the garment industry. Our response in these areas are to build partnerships and support for supporting workers and businesses in the textile industry and to become more sustainable, including partnering with UN Women to support businesses implementing commitments on women empowerment in their workplace and supply chains, particularly in the garment industry. Developing actions to support producers in the textile industry in Uzbekistan, meeting global social and environmental norms. Developing a position on the EU's green recovery that will advocate, amongst others, on social and environmental sustainability throughout all industries. And partnering with the Program for Sustainable Textiles, Switzerland 2030, to help the Swiss textile industry meet social and environmental global commitments. Well, next slide, please. I'm now coming to the end of my presentation for today. And if I would like you to take away one thing from my presentation, it would be the following. It is our conviction that our actions together will help enhance sustainability in the future. Ensure the garment industry again acts as a force for good on environment and social sustainability. As amfori, we will work diligently to deliver ever better environmental and social sustainability programs and tools to our members and the wider community, as it is the only way to drive our recovery during this COVID-19 pandemic. After all, this is the core of our mission and the very essence of Trade with Purpose. Thank you for joining us today.
And thank you very much, Christian, for an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed this. Many things to comment on. What I would like to highlight is where you say the industry can still realize its potential. And I really like the positive outlook that is behind that. And I know that that amfori has shown also to be able to put this positive outlook into practice, which is what it's all about, to make the change. These kind of presentations always remind me how important it is to collaborate. And it also reminds me that although we are, as organizations, collaborating, it can always be a lot more. And that is also the good thing about fairs and expos. Even if they're digital or virtual, they're still meeting places of people. And sharing these kind of stories again is a good incentive to further the collaboration. So thank you very much for that. Of course, I have some questions for you that I would like to ask. Some things that maybe you can highlight. Having seen many things that you're doing also as a response to the COVID-19. What would be the main lesson for the garment industry that you've learned from COVID-19 crisis?
Thank you, Matthias. And I think it's a very relevant question. Maybe not the most pleasant one. The COVID-19 pandemic is revealing and further reinforcing the deep inequalities in our global economy, both within and between countries. And while businesses and workers across the world are affected by the crisis, we can clearly see once again low income and marginalized populations pay the highest price and the consequence suffer the most. So this is particularly visible when you look at the garment industry. Living wages, social protection floors are crucial to ensure that global trade benefits everyone in the industry and all industries, so to say. Building the resilience of businesses, workers and communities across the globe is absolutely essential to enable them to absorb economic shocks like the one we're currently experiencing. And maybe last but not least, on a global level, we also need countries and trading blocs to work multilaterally together to ensure that supply chains remain resilient. You know, when I look at the tensions between major trading and manufacturing countries, such as, well, yes, the United States and China, especially during a pandemic, these challenges or these crisis tensions are not productive and could be resolved through, let's say, continued dialogue. The placement of tariffs out of the blue risk the loss of jobs and would, you know, place a range of businesses, workers, lives and families in what I really regard unnecessary precarious economic and social situation.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So yeah, it's not just a magnifying glass that the crisis offers us, but also maybe an appeal to our moral compass very strongly. And also, it's not a situation where we should abandon global thinking and global supply chains. We should just use it to improve upon the supply chains that are there. So yeah, really good. Final question. Women, you were speaking about women empowerment, and of course that's a special element of our global fashion industry, the amount of women active in our industry. What role does women empowerment play in the future of sustainability in the fashion industry, according to you?
Thank you, Matthias. I mean, this is something, I mean, you know, is particularly close to my heart. Women empowerment has a pivotal role to play in the future of sustainability in the fashion industry. As mentioned, about 75% of the workers in the industry are women. However, they are very often disproportionately represented in the most vulnerable, marginalized, and low-paid positions. Effectively improving worker conditions and supply chains in the industry will have to be done with a gender lens. I would also like to just maybe highlight that women are underrepresented in leadership positions across the sector. If I reference 2018, the number of women leading the 15 largest mass market apparel companies on the Fortune 500 list was a simple 0. And this is a clear underrepresentation, and leadership does not help the cause of addressing the plight of women at the lower end of our supply chains. Amfori this year, in February, I signed the UN Women Empowerment Principles, which help businesses empower women from the C-suite of buying companies to the factory floor of producers. And I have also just signed a partnership with UN Women to engage more businesses to sign the principles. And this is what will be required to improve workers' rights in the industry. And at the end, one additional aspect I would like to really refer to is that women itself play a dominant role as consumers of fashion. So their empowerment in society as a whole, I believe, would help influence choices in consumption, as such, you know, support the very women that produce the garments of choice.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you're highlighting this point, because I think more people should do that in our industry. I think it's great work that you're doing there, and deserves to be followed by more. Maybe even looking at our own organization, if I look at our board of directors, some improvements there in the ratio between men and women can certainly be made, but that's only a small part. So thank you very much for raising that. Thank you very much overall, Christian, for an excellent presentation, sharing with us what amfori BSCI has been doing in response to COVID-19 and will be doing in the coming months and years. Your vision on your positive vision, I would say, on changes in the apparel industry. So thank you very much, and I wish you good luck on your strong work.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Really appreciate the opportunity and wish you all the best for the Expo.
Thank you.